how far would you go to get what you want? Would you lie about your background? Would you plot against whoever gets in your way, even if they're family or friends? If you're Teresa Chavez, your answer would be yes. Teresa is a telenovela that came out in 2011 that follows a young, ambitious woman who dreams of having this lavish lifestyle. However, the only problem is she is poor. She does everything in her power to get what she wants, aka only getting with men that have money. Others may call her a gold digger, but honestly, girl, in this economy, I don't blame her. When I tell you that I've seen this 200 something episode novela like 3 times, girl, I ain't lying. And I feel like the reason why Teresa is so really popular among people is because the main antagonist isn't so black and white. In Teresa, you can actually see why she does the things she does. You can see why she is the way she is, and you can actually sympathize with her. Not that she does excusable actions, because she doesn't, which we'll get into later, but I think it's one of the first novelas where you can still be rooting for her even if she's not the greatest person. Also, the show does a great job in showing why the other characters aren't saints either. Lastly, I think why this novela is so popular is because she has the most iconic lines and sads that I've ever seen in a TV show character. For example,
Entre ser y no ser, yo soy.
Voy a pedirle a Dios para que te ilumine o te elimine.
¿Estás segura de que quiere dejar el vestido?
Ay, mira, si le dejé al novio, ¿por qué no le voy a dejar el vestido?
if you haven't seen the novela but want to, I'm going to get into spoilers, so just a warning. So Teresa follows this young woman who recently graduated high school, and she is with Paulo, one of the richest guys in their school. At this point, Teresa has been deceiving others about her background, like she's been telling everyone that her parents are and that they're wealthy, so everyone believes that, you know, she's one of them. So at this party, when she forgets her shawl, she goes home, but Paulo goes ahead and tries to give it back to her. When he arrives at Teresa's neighborhood, he finds out that she has been lying this entire time about her wealth. So she actually lives in this vecindad, which is like, how do I explain it? It's like a barrio. It's like where the non-wealthy people live.
I'm in the ghetto.
He breaks up with her the next day because, you know, she's not rich. And at this point, Paulo actually gangs up with the Regina George wannabe of the school, Aida, which, girl, I'll get into why I hate her. He plots with her to humiliate her in front of the whole school and expose her for who she is.
Por otro lado, entre nosotros, a una pobre y mentirosa. Alguien que estudió con nosotros gracias a una beca.
Once they publicly humiliate her in front of the whole school, Teresa swears revenge on these people, as she should, because, girl, I would too. And we actually find out that Teresa's little sister, Rosita, who is a gymnast, she actually has a heart condition and she passes out during a gymnastic competition. And unfortunately, during the novela, she passes away due to the family's financial situation. They cannot afford her treatment. And this is where Teresa's ambition of becoming wealthy really starts. She swears that, you know, this kind of thing would never happen again, and that she basically doesn't want to struggle financially anymore.
Voy a hacer hasta lo imposible para llegar lejos, muy lejos.
Now, it isn't a telenovela without some intense love triangle, love square in this case. So we're gonna get into Teresa's love interests in this novela, and I'm gonna give each of them a ranking because, girl, why not? Okay, so the first love interest that we have in this novela is Mariano. So Mariano is Teresa's true love in the beginning of the novela, but Teresa chooses not to be with him because he does not have any money and he's a taxi driver. But like any good novela, he strives to be a doctor and he gets it in like a year, which is bizarre. But that's telenovela logic for you. And although like I did like him at first, Mariano is pretty toxic. But when Teresa gets back with Mariano, admittedly to get back at her friend Aurora, because she had a major crush on him and she want him to like her. So when she gets back with him, he started to become really emotionally manipulative to Teresa when she just wants a better life and to get out of like her life of poverty. I will say I agree that Mariano was cautious of Arturo, and he's another character that we'll dive into in a little bit. Rightfully so, because she actually ended up with Arturo. Like, the thing is with telenovelas, like, the men are very much machistas, which, if you don't know what that is, it's toxic masculinity, basically. And Mariano was not as much as Arturo, but Mariano didn't really understand why Teresa was really ambitious. He knew that Aida was bullying her, he knew that she was being humiliated at school, and he knew that she was always struggling financially, right? And him too. Why wouldn't you understand where she's coming from? But I will cut him some slack. Teresa did lead him on when she was seeing her next man, her professor. And she did sleep with him the night before she was supposed to get married to Arturo. They were both madly in love with each other, but Teresa's ambition got in the way. However, one thing that gets to me is that Mariano was extremely jealous. Like, he was always meddling in her business. He was always asking her where she was, and he even kept tabs on her when Teresa's mom asked him to. She was, please look after her. Oh, I know she's going to his house, even if it was like for something about school. He even went to the professor's house where Teresa was and was screaming at her to demand what she was doing and demand that she get away from him. And it's like, boy, I get that he's hot, and he is, like, it's really, but it's just like, are you not embarrassed? Are you, like, is it not embarrassing for you?
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
And also, once Teresa was pretty much done with him, even though they were going back and forth constantly, but even when she was done with him and Mariano was trying to move on, he got with Teresa's friend. I will get into this more later, but he got with Teresa's friend, still knowing that he was in love with Teresa, like, knowing that he was not over her, knowing that it's gonna take a long time for him to get over her, and he's over here trying to have a relationship with her friend. Based on this, I'm going to give him a red flag rating of 3 out of 5. He's getting there, but he's not as bad as the other two, in my opinion. Okay, now we'll get into the second love interest, Arturo. So Arturo is a pretty messy character. Arturo is actually Teresa's professor in this. So she just graduated high school. She's barely starting college, so she's like 19. This man is probably in like his early 30s or like late 20s. They don't really say his age, but he's professor, you get it. Like, there's an age gap, there's a power imbalance there. He's in a position of authority, and she's young, she's beautiful, and of course she's also vulnerable, right? And you know, he kind of abuses that authority a little bit. For example, when he finds out that Teresa cannot afford her college tuition, I mean, she got a scholarship to be in like college, but you know, she still has to pay off the rest. And when he finds out this information, what does he do? He offers to pay all of her tuition in return for her to work for him as his assistant or under him as a lawyer, because she's starting to be a lawyer. That's very iffy. It just feels like when someone is offering to pay your whole tuition, he did ask her for something in return, but you also feel, as a woman, like that would make me feel like I would have to give him something more than that, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm in debt more to him, and that's really icky to me, especially since he's probably a good 10 years older than her. As much as I like Arturo for Teresa, just because he matches her, I don't want to sound mean, but he matches her intelligence more. He's a professor, he's very academic, and so is Teresa. And I'm not saying Mariano wasn't, because he becomes a doctor, but I feel like Arturo almost understands her a bit more, and they're just more compatible in my opinion. But he's more toxic than Mariano. He has some trauma that parents died when he was young, and he has insecurity issues where he was actually supposed to get married before Teresa, but she left him planted at the altar, which we'll get into more later, I promise. Here's the thing that really bothers me. Even when they weren't dating, Arturo was very jealous and possessive of Teresa, and just like Mariano was, but it's a different thing when you're not dating, and it's a different thing when you're her professor. Like, I get that you're into her, but ew, sir, like, you're not even dating, like, you're not married, what are you doing, sir? Like, you're supposed to be focusing on lawyering, okay? Which is funny because we barely seen them do, but whatever, telenovela logic. And he was also just blowing up on her when she was just merely engaging with other guys. Like, for example, when Mariano came over to Arturo's house, he was looking through his window that Teresa was just like hugging Mariano. And I get it, you know, she's still very much in love with him, but at this point, I think he knew that he was her ex. But sir, he blew up on her after she saw her hugging him, and it's like, boy, again, you're not dating. That's her ex. Sir, calm down. Those kind of very possessive anger issues that it's just I have a problem with. And even when you're dating or when you're married, you shouldn't be that angry over your girl just like merely engaging with other guy. Like hugging them maybe, but it's like, girl. The major thing that gets me though is that when Arturo and Teresa get married, and of course Teresa does it out of her convenience, but she does eventually fall in love with him, he finds out that Teresa lost her virginity to Mariano before, and this man loses it. And I'm like, girl, let me get this straight. You're mad at her for losing her virginity with Mariano, but then you almost get married and you also had a kid with her, which he finds out later. The double standard is double standarding. Make it make sense. And once Teresa and Arturo get married, it gets even worse. Arturo is borderline pretty physically aggressive with her. For example, when he gets super angry at her, he grabs her shoulders and he was like kind of throwing her around basically, and he even almost physically assaults her at some point. And the icing on the cake, the cherry on top of everything, on the fucking chocolate drizzle on the banana split, is that he even cheated on Teresa. Which, okay, granted, she's cheating on him first. But anyways, two wrongs don't make it right. Arturo cheated on Teresa with the woman that left him planted on the altar.
Electric chair.
Girl, no. He was even entertaining the idea of Paloma trying to get with him, having the life that they were supposed to have, even though she left him planted at the altar. Like, girl. Anyways, like, he was entertaining the idea of getting back with her while still married with Teresa. I think based on everything I just said, I give Arturo a 4 out of 5 red flag rating because that man is pretty toxic. The very last thing I have to say about Arturo is that he loves to portray Teresa as the villain of the marriage when he finds out about her betrayal, about like the whole thing with Mariano, but then conveniently forgets his own betrayal. He justifies his cheating, his actions, his physical aggression with her because, oh, you made me do it kind of thing. Very toxic. I hate that. I hate that. Okay, when I say Fernando, who is a romantic interest for Teresa, I say that very lightly. Fernando is Arturo's best friend and is also engaged to Arturo's sister, Luisa. So Luisa is Teresa's sister-in-law. So basically, he's engaged with her, like they're in love, blah, 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 blah. And the reason why Teresa is even interested in Fernando is because when Teresa finds out about Arturo's betrayal, she kind of basically was like, girl, either you take me to Europe for vacation or we get divorced, and I mean period. So he takes her to Europe. Arturo actually confesses that if he loses this case that's going on while they're in Europe, he will lose everything. And turns out that he lost the case because Teresa's father, who works for the firm, actually got mugged, and well, he lost the evidence that Arturo needed to win the case. And since he lost them, Arturo lost the case, which means that he's broke. So this man is flat broke, and you know, Teresa comes up with a plan saying, okay, what if I seduce your best friend, basically I steal his money and we just run away. And of course Arturo is like, girl, are you out of your damn mind? First of all, he's engaged to my sister. It's a big no-no, which I agree. She doesn't listen to him and basically goes through with her plan. But it doesn't go as she planned. Okay, this is also like where I truly cannot defend Teresa as much as I love her. She deliberately went after her sister-in-law's fiance. And let me just say, Luisa is such a sweet person. At first she was worried of Teresa, which I understand. But, you know, she grew to love her and they became pretty close. So for Teresa to just completely blindside Luisa, not even consider Luisa's feelings in all this, she steals her man basically, and she kind of did get what she deserved from that, I will say that. She knew he was engaged to Luisa, and this woman really said,
Catch me outside, how about that?
Of course, like an idiot, Fernando falls for Teresa's charms, looks and everything, so he falls for her. and basically breaks it off with Teresa, and Teresa succeeds in stealing his money. As I mentioned before, her plan doesn't work out that well because she ends up alone. Like, Arturo leaves her, basically. No one in her friend circle talk to her anymore. She's rich but alone. So, well, I don't know which is better, like being poor but with a lot of friends or rich with no one. I take rich with no one. For his rating, this man is a walking red flag. Like, when you put on, okay, whatever.
When do it becomes...
He is a 5 out of 5. Oh, I also forgot to mention Paulo. I can't. Paulo is very forgettable in this novela. He is the first man that we see that Teresa's with. He's her first ex and everything. He is the one that finds out about her lying, about her background. His thing was that he wanted revenge on Teresa. Like I said before, he gangs up with the wannabe Regina George of the school, and he publicly humiliates her in front of the school with her, and, you know, never sex up with her, of course. But the thing is, he gets with Aida while still being in love with Teresa. Very much like Mariano in a way. Oh, and he even almost married Aida. I think he did fall in love with her, kind of, or he liked her more as the time went on. And the thing that I hate the most about him is he's very classist. Out of all of that, I give him 4.5. 5. Okay, now that we covered the men in Teresa's life, let's cover the women. So first of all, we have Aida, Teresa's arch nemesis. Y'all, I really despise this character. From day one, Aida hated Teresa. And not just for stealing Paulo or whatever because she was into him, but because Teresa was smart, she was beautiful, and she's poor, basically. All in that order. She even called Teresa Rata de la Vecindad, which is like the rat of the barrio or little rat of the neighborhood or something. Her and Fernando's mom are like the most classist people ever, which annoys the fuck out of me. How can you hate someone for being poor?
Bruh.
Like, explain that to me. And girl, she was angry that it's for like stealing Paulo, even though Paulo had the emotional intelligence of a rock. Which, girl, I guess they're match made in heaven for that. She's that girl in school who thinks that, you know, being rich is morally superior, and that shows. She treats everyone below her like shit, especially Teresa. She even insinuated that Teresa got into the college because she slept her way through the top to get there. Even though Teresa got most of her tuition paid through a scholarship, y'all are the dumb ones. She got half of it paid through college scholarships, and she got the other half paid for her professor, and y'all are paying for everything she got for free. So, and another thing is, she always blamed Teresa for everything that went wrong in her life, even when Teresa had nothing to do with it. If she had problems with Paulo, it was Teresa. If her parents were having marriage troubles, which they already were, it was Teresa's fault. And another thing, Teresa's dad was trying to get with Teresa, which is so funny to me, and Teresa rubbed that shit in her face, which, girl, same, I would too. She even went as far as to go into Teresa's vecindad neighborhood and insulted everyone that lives there. Like, girl, like, who are you?
Wait a minute! Who are you?
To say that. Like, she later apologized to everyone afterwards, but that's still I don't know, like, to me that still doesn't excuse everything that you did. Even if you apologize, people like that don't really change in my opinion, but whatever. We'll move on to the next character, Aurora. So Aurora in this novela is like the goody two-shoes of the novela. She's academic, she is nice, she's a sweet person, she's kind of like the Katie in the Mean Girls. But honestly, her character always bothered me in a way because she always seemed fake. First of all, she's a very good friend with Teresa. We actually see them together in the novela, and, you know, she comforts Teresa when Aida humiliates her in front of everyone. The thing that bothers me is that she remained friends with Aida throughout the novela. Girl, why would you be friends with your friend's bully? You know what I mean? Like, that's so fake to me. You wouldn't be friends with a bully that you publicly humiliates, constantly harasses your friend. And I think she has defended Teresa when Aida was like unhinged and everything, but still, the fact that you're still friends with her, that's sus. That also just tells me that you're not a girl's girl, in my opinion. And the next thing that she does, it's very, yeah, you're not a girl's girl. Aurora basically is in love with Mariano. She was obsessed with him, and she knows how Teresa feels about him. Like, she knows that he is her ex, and that Mariano's still very much in love with her, and Teresa also still has feelings for him. But this girl still tries to go after this man every single chance she gets. Girl code for us is not going after your friend's sex.
Ex-boyfriends are just off limits to friends. I mean, that's just like the rules of feminism.
She honestly reminds me of that character from Grey's Anatomy, the one who's like,
So pick me. Choose me. Love me.
and that shit just irritates me. Girl, she even tried feeling up Mariano, being all interested in him in the funeral of Teresa's little sister. Girl, there's a time and place for that. A funeral is not, okay? Like, keep your horniness somewhere else, girl. Oh, and the one last thing I have to say about her is that Aurora's mom actually abandoned her when she was little. And she actually came back later in the novela, but just to, like, steal their money, basically. I can kind of see why she would kind of cling on to her again. It's your first time seeing her after I don't know how many years, but the fact that you know that she abandoned you and you're still trying to defend her in front of your dad. Her dad is so loving. He was the one that raised her, you know, as she should, but he loves her. He's so caring for her, and then she kind of slaps him in the face by defending her mom. Why would you do that to your dad? I don't know, like, to me, she just seems like a major hypocrite. The last woman we will talk about is Doña Refugio. So Doña Refugio is Teresa's mom. She's another character I cannot stand. From the very beginning, Refugio is portrayed to be someone who is terrified of change. Her daughter's ambition to escape poverty and like have a better life, to marry rich, it scares her. She just genuinely could never understand why Teresa would want that, and she often expresses concern for Teresa's ambition, which I kind of get. She was right about being concerned with Arturo paying for everything, and she was kind of sus about that. Like, I understand that. For her mom, her desire for upward mobility, wanting a lavish lifestyle, is not just ambition, it's a threat to her. She sees it as Teresa abandoning her roots, her upbringing. That makes Refugio feel super insecure. She believes that wanting a better life, Teresa is rejecting everything that she holds dear, even if it means leaving behind the life that she never wanted. I think what makes her more frustrating is her refusal for Teresa's help. So there are many instances where Teresa is wanting her parents to get better jobs. For example, he works as a mechanic, but Teresa helped him get a job at Arturo's firm. It pays more, right? And because they were barely scraping by as it is with 2 kids, well, one now. And Teresa's mom works as a laundry worker. Her parents both have heart conditions. So Teresa's mom cannot do anything very physically strenuous or anything, but she is looking for them to have a better life. Yet her mom resists any attempt to better their situation. Once Teresa helps her father get that job at the firm, her mom is furious. She thinks that Teresa is forcing them to live a life that they don't want. But her father is very much accepting it. He enjoys wearing suits. He enjoys having a better paying job to help them. This woman is just, we don't want that, like, we're happy as we are.
Porque lo que me ofreces no me lo he ganado.
¿Ya ves? Mi papá no lo acepta por tu culpa, mamá.
Entiéndelo, Teresa. Tu madre lo hace por dignidad.
Which, girl, I know you're not. I don't want to be mean, but like, girl, how can you say that after your daughter died from not being able to have enough money to pay for her treatment? Wouldn't you want to have better standing? And also, especially since you and her father have heart conditions, she is angry at Teresa for pushing them out of their comfort zone and into a world that they don't understand. And this is actually clear also when Teresa, like, she actually gives them a handbook on how to have better mannerisms.
Don't laugh. You can't laugh.
Which girl? Okay, that was a little out of hand. It's unfortunate, but people do look at that. Like, people do look at your mannerisms, how you behave yourself, how you eat out in public. And she's also angry at Teresa for not respecting the work of her father had been doing, and sees it as a betrayal almost. And it's like, girl, he didn't really enjoy work as a mechanic either, though. The thing that bothers me is that she thinks it's selfish that Teresa uses her father's money to buy her school supplies and clothes, although she was a fashion icon in the show. But then she was out here giving away her money to, like, other people in the vecindad. In your situation, you don't need to do that, okay? Like, they can get their own money. Like, I know y'all are in this vecindad because y'all are struggling, but also, how do you think it's selfish for your daughter that she needs the money for school? Now, moving on to the next topic. Of course, it's not a telenovela without some misogyny sprinkled in. It's not just about Teresa being a villain, it's about how women in this story are judged and punished and demonized for the same or lesser things that the men do in this novela. So for example, like I mentioned before, while Teresa was in the wrong for sleeping with Mariano the night before her wedding, Arturo did the same thing while they were married with Paloma, like I said, like his ex and the woman that he was supposed to marry at first. Here's the thing, like Mariano did not suffer any shame or consequences when he did the same thing, girl. Like, it takes two to tango, okay? Arturo was also justifying his actions of possessiveness over Teresa, but never getting the same heat as Teresa. Honestly, like, this is textbook misogyny. Women are supposed to be loyal angels, but men get to be flawed but human. And somehow Teresa's always the one who is expected to forgive, to change, and to prove her worth, while the men just live their lives, basically, and are the ones that are like, yeah, maybe I'll forgive you, Teresa, for doing all of that, even though I did the same shit. We cannot talk about double standards without mentioning Ruben, Aida's father. You know what? This man makes me so angry. That's why I put him at the top. Like, Ruben is here for the worst people. Cheated on his wife, Aida's mother, multiple times. He has a long-term affair with Esperanza, who is also Teresa's friend and lives in the same vecindad. He gets her pregnant, and he was also hooking up with his wife's friend, Mayra. And Mayra's good friends with Aida. And yet, who got all the blame? Esperanza. Another thing that really bothered me about Aida, which I didn't mention before, is the women also have internalized misogyny. Like, for example, when she finds out that her father has this whole affair with Esperanza, Aida slut-shamed her to hell and back. Let me just say that.
Por mí, que se muera el hijo de Esperanza.
She blamed Esperanza for destroying her family, and then Mayra was also jealous of the women that he was with, and I'm like, girl, he's married. And he has a whole ass other kid coming too, but like anyways. Yeah, sure, you can call Esperanza a homewrecker, which she kind of is a little bit. But Ruben didn't get the same slack. She was the one going to the hospital where she worked, Esperanza as a nurse. She goes to her place and she almost caused Esperanza to have a miscarriage from all the stress that she caused her. She always insults her, you know what I mean? All the blame goes to Esperanza, but not Ruben. Like, ma'am, look at your dad. He's worse. Esperanza got the heat while Ruben was just there. He was living, breathing, eating. That man was unbothered. Teresa is a very nuanced character. I love her. She has her iconic moments, her iconic lines, her iconic shit. But also, she's ambitious, which is not a bad thing, but there's a level of ambition that too far is a little too far, and she's also manipulative and is not afraid to hurt others that get in her way. And one major thing that I dislike about Teresa is her attitude towards service workers. She treats him like shit, especially when she marries Arturo. And there was also this one scene where she's really rude to this front desk worker at an airport, and it's like, girl, they're just trying to live their lives. They're just living paycheck to paycheck. They don't need your BS, okay? I've worked in customer service, like I've worked in retail, and let me tell you, girl, we do not get paid enough to deal with people's bullshit. I hate when people are rude to service workers. Another thing that I didn't like was how she treated her parents, especially her dad. Throughout the whole novela, Teresa is embarrassed of her parents, which we see literally in the first episode where she claims that, you know, they're billionaires. So in reality, she does everything she can to make them seem less poor, for the lack of a better word. She avoids them at all costs. Like, she hates going back home, which I get.
Odio ser pobre, lo odio, lo odio.
But she just never mentions them unless she's lying about them. And I always felt sorry for her dad, because she always pushed him away when he came back all greasy from working with cars. And, you know, he's trying to hug her, like trying to, you know, love on her like as a dad would. And I think that she was also really close with her dad, because it seems like he was the only one who'd really understood where she was coming from. He understood why Teresa wanted to have a better life. He understood why Teresa wanted to marry rich and stuff, and he didn't really blame her for that, unlike her mom. Teresa's the only daughter they have left after the death of Rosita. Lastly, I think she truly fucked up with the situation with Fernando, fooling around with Luisa's fiance. She wasn't in love with him. She was still out there, like, seducing him with the full motive of stealing his money while not caring about her sister-in-law. It's one thing to go after your professor, which the professor went after her too, mind you. And it's another thing to lead on a guy who is still in love with you and to get with him just to spite your friend. But it's a totally different thing when you're close close with your husband's sister and then seduce her fiance and then take his money. I think that's where I cannot defend her. Luisa was the sweetest character in this show. Like, she was so sweet. She loved Teresa. She never looked down on anyone regardless of their money or their status or anything. So for Teresa deliberately go after her fiance, and she turned out to be pregnant, by the way, and ruin her life in that way when she was probably the only one who was really nice to her, is really shitty. So I'm glad that Luisa didn't take Fernando back after he begged her to take him back, after how he realized how dumb he was for falling for Teresa. In conclusion, so the novela ends with everyone cutting Teresa off because they find out who she really was, and she ends up rich but alone. In the end, Aurora ends up with Mariano. Ruben gets in jail for fraud. Oh, and he dies in prison, by the way. They killed him. And then Mayra, Ruben's other mistress, also ends up in jail because she was also trying to steal money or whatever with him. And then Esperanza, Ruben's like main girl mistress, she ends up having a boy. And Aida's chilling, I guess, and loves her new half-brother. Luisa ends up raising the baby alone. Teresa's father passes away due to a heart condition, but also because he was really disappointed in Teresa after the whole thing unraveled. And lastly, Paulo also unfortunately passes away. Okay, now Teresa has 3 endings. So the first ending is Arturo takes Teresa back. The other ending is kind of wild. It is when Teresa is alone in the mansion, and then Fernando sneaks up on her and tells her how she ruined his life, and then he shoots her. Yeah. So that's another ending. And the last one we see 6 months later after the whole debacle. We see Teresa kind of restarting her life, and she works at an office and she is trying to seduce her new boss. So it's kind of repeating the cycle again. So one question I kind of ask myself, is Teresa misunderstood or is she just toxic? Teresa is a very complex character, and whether she's misunderstood or toxic depends on the perspective you take. In one hand, I can see why she's understood, in the sense that her ambition, born from her desire to escape poverty and then wanting revenge on like people who humiliated her and constantly harassed her and bullied her for being poor, and then the fact that her little sister passed away due to her family not having enough money to pay for her treatment. I can definitely see why her ambition really drove her in that way and why she did the things she did, although I can't excuse her seducing Fernando, stealing his money, and then marrying Arturo while she was still very much in love with Mariano. Those things I can't really defend her on, but I can also sympathize with her in that way. All of this is driven by a genuine need for something better. Like, she wants a better life, and honestly, girl, who doesn't want that? Like, who doesn't want to marry rich? Who doesn't want to live in a mansion? However, like I said before, as the novela progresses, it becomes clear that she does cross a line from being misunderstood to being toxic. Teresa often manipulates the people around her, no matter who they are, if they're her family, her friends, anyone, basically. And she disrespects the ones who really care about her, service workers, and is willing to sacrifice her relationships to achieve her goals, to achieve her ambition. She uses others like her parents, the men in her life, and even as her friends as stepping stones to further her own ambitions. Her betrayals and her growing elitism all point to the pattern of selfishness that overshadows the noble intentions that she may have started with. So while Teresa, in my opinion, is in some ways is misunderstood, especially in terms of her trying to escape her poverty, her toxic behavior becomes undeniable as she continuously disregards others for her own gain. In the end, she might have started as someone driven by survival, but she becomes a toxic character whose ambition blinds her to the people who truly care about her. But what do you think? Was Teresa just a product of her circumstances, or was she just too toxic to redeem? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And also, if you really like this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.